From the Oakland Hills to Jack London Square, from the port to the Coliseum, this is Talk of the Town, an in-depth conversation about the people and issues important to Oakland.
Hello, I'm Dave Clark, and welcome to my favorite show, Talk of the Town. I'm so glad that you're with us, and I have a very interesting guest for you today. She's an old friend, a young friend, a wonderful friend. My guest today is Shannon Nash. Shannon Nash there are so many different things. Now you can see she's a beautiful, talented lady. Forbes magazine described Shannon Nash, who is the CEO of the company Wing. CFO. She should be. No, that's wishful thinking, the CFO of the company Wing. She is not only the CFO, she is a tax accountant, she's a filmmaker, she's an attorney, and she is a Renaissance woman, which is the way Forbes magazine described you. Does that fit or feel correct, Madam CFO?
I mean, I think that, at the end of the day, those are great accolades.
Yeah.
What I hope to be is someone that has inspired the next generation to, strive for excellence. Like, those are the type of things that as I get, more senior in my career, that I think about is how am I helping and impacting to create change both for, my organization, but also for the community.
Tell me about the company Wing. And Alphabet and all of that in the connection.
Yeah, so Wing is a subsidiary of Alphabet, which is Google's sister company. Yeah. We are a drone delivery company, and our mission is to be the preferred method of delivery for the millions of small packages that are delivered each day. And we all know, I'm sure you go home sometimes too, I'm gonna guess, lots of boxes, and there's lots of them with small things in them.
Yeah.
And, from a sustainability standpoint, that is something that we aim to help with, whether you're talking about the environment, certainly you're talking about the ability to get those packages in a very cost-efficient, quicker manner.
Yeah.
We are what we're doing with our drone delivery services, we are able to take those small packages and often get them to you in a very efficient, like under 30 minutes manner. So,
you are a very accomplished businesswoman, an accomplished, talented woman, and you've done many things since the time I knew you many years ago. Yeah. How did you get into Wing and this part of your career?
So, as a little girl, my favorite cartoon was the Jetsons.
Yeah.
I loved the Jetsons, and I just remember dreaming could any of this ever be true? And I feel fortunate that we are alive in a day where if you go back and look at that cartoon, there's a lot of things, right? Remember when George and his boss used to talk to each other on the video?
Yeah.
That's video conferencing now, and it's very common. And there were drones that were in that cartoon. Yeah. And so when I first heard about the opportunity to work with a company that was actually making some of my childhood dreams come true, I was sold. I was all in on trying to help that company scale.
There aren't that many black females at your level in the corporate world. Yeah. How do you feel about that?
Well, obviously I want more.
Yeah.
But I feel what I will tell you is I feel a level of responsibility to really model and show and be visible for a whole generation of, in particular, women who are striving to climb that corporate ladder. It was very interesting. Several years ago during COVID and right after George Floyd, there were people talking about questions I got were, do you get tired of having to be a representative? Do you get tired of having to be a role model? And my unequivocal answer to that was no, absolutely not. These are amazing opportunities that I have, and I have to make the most of them. And I think about the role models that I have going back to, in my family, my maternal grandmother just passed this year. And I think about her life, what she went through, how she left the South, moved up to Michigan, and forged a whole life for her family and generations to come, and how hard she worked. And I think I don't work hard nearly as hard as she worked.
She did.
So what am I complaining about?
Yeah. That morphs into you as a filmmaker and what you want to see on corporate boards and women and diversity. And tell me about the film.
Yeah, let me take a step back because you and I have known each other for a long time, so we should share that. I met you back in Los Angeles.
Yes.
At the time, I had taken a pivot in my career for personal reasons. I'm sure we'll get into them because we share those reasons. And I was working for Debbie Allen, and that's when we met.
Yes.
And so the bug, if you will, of understanding how you put together a production and you tell a story, I owe that to Debbie. Because working with her,
of course,
teaches you how to do that. So I never fashioned myself that I wanted to be like a filmmaker. It's just that when I felt I had a story to tell and others agreed with me, I knew how to put it together as a producer, an executive producer, having really learned from the best, right? Yeah. Some of the best. And so, you know, my first film, before we did this film on board diversity, was on autism. Yes. And that film went all the way to winning best documentary at the American Pavilion in Cannes many years ago.
Congratulations.
So
belated congratulations.
Thank you. It was called Color My Mind. So I knew how to do it. And so it's one of those things where I hear a story that I'm passionate about and others agree, then I try to manifest it. And in particular, the story of the documentary that I co-executive produced in the last year and a half is really born by, there's two people, Robin Washington and Marlene Santil, who came together after George Floyd. They're both very accomplished Black women who are on corporate boards. And they were getting a plethora of phone calls. Because what happens with these boards is they go to the same people over and over again.
Over and over again.
Because you're in the network.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like a job application, right? Yeah. It's like you have to be in someone's network to be thought of. And they decided that they were going to really support a group of their, people that were in their network who weren't getting the calls. Yeah. Like myself, I wasn't getting the calls. And they did a Zoom. And it was like, I think it was like September, October, like right after George Floyd happened. They did a Zoom, they invited about 18 women, and the whole purpose of the Zoom was like, are you interested in being on corporate board? Let's talk about our experiences, and we're going to help you in your board journey. And then fast forward, like a year later, the 18 women are all on corporate boards. Wow. And so I saw that momentum happening, so I was like, ooh, there might be a story there. And I remember asking Marlene Santil, how do you want to actually take this? Because you're helping a lot of people, but it's how do you scale it? Because it's like one person at a time type of thing. Mm-hmm. And she was like, well, I've got some ideas. And I was like, well, I've made films before, so, that's a possibility. Yeah. And I'm told I tricked her. And our filmmaker by the name of Deborah Riley Draper, our director, she's an award-winning film director. I'd known her for many, many years. She had actually just gotten off of making the film for Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, which I'm a member of. Oh, really? So she made that documentary. It had done very well. And she'd just gotten off of that. And so I invited them both to the spa for my birthday weekend. It was definitely a setup.
Excellent.
And so I wanted them to meet. They clearly did. And by the time that spa weekend was over, we had already scripted out what this film would look like.
Describe the film.
The film follows the story of the first African-American woman to be on a board. Her name is Patricia Roberts Harris. And a lot of people know, not a lot. So if you learned about her somehow in Black History Month, which is when people learn, I think people may have learned about her being an ambassador, for example. Yes. She was a dean of Howard Law School. So people, but the board part seemed to have been kind of lost in history. And I tell you that because when we first started putting together this documentary, I just by happenstance happened to go to dinner, my husband and I, with this gentleman by the name of Barry Williams.
Can I mention your husband, Bill?
You can mention
my husband, Bill. He is a great man, and I didn't want to leave him out. Yes.
Thank you. He's a keeper, right?
Yes, he is.
He's a keeper. We went to dinner with, Barry and his wife. Barry is like a mentor to us and a lot of people, particularly in the Bay Area. Barry has been a mentor to. He's been on 15 corporate boards, just really well known in that arena. And I said, hey, we're making this film. I'm so excited. We are going to feature, and I named someone as the first African-American woman on a board because that's what Google said. When you searched it, that you got a name, and it wasn't Patricia's. And he looked at me and said, well, she's not the first, so why are you making a film about her?
Wow.
So this really was a light bulb to tell me you got to make this film, because the history of this was actually oral. It was going to be lost. And so by making the film, you actually protect that history for, the films go into, Library of Congress and places of that nature. So I will say now, so we started making the film. We certainly did our research, figured out that Barry was right. Like when you looked at the dates, Patricia was first.
Yeah.
And if you Googled it now, we've gotten a lot of press. We premiered our film during the Tribeca Film Festival. We've rung the bell at NASDAQ, at New York Stock Exchange. There's a lot of press on us. If you go to Google now and type first African-American woman, you will get the proper person. So if nothing else happens,
you already did
we
that.
protected the history.
Wow. How did you become you? As long as I've known you, you've always been an accomplished woman, a classy woman, a woman in high levels. As a little girl? Where did it come from?
I mean, I definitely give all the credit to my parents. I think parents can really help mold a child, but they can also help with getting that support at a young age.
Yeah.
And for me, I can definitely tell you, probably about a couple years ago, O Magazine did an article on when was your first experience with racism?
Yeah.
And I talk about how it was roughly when I was about 4 or 5 years old, and that's when I really understood that my parents supported me. And that goes through, then it helps you throughout the rest of your really young life. And that is, I was in an integrated classroom. This is the 70s, right?
Yeah.
And my mother was a substitute teacher in that elementary school, and she happened to walk past my class and saw literally all the black kids coloring and having fun or whatever, just doing whatever they wanted to do. And it was only probably 4 or 5 black kids in the class. And everybody else was sitting in circle time reading a book. And so my mom asked me after school, why don't you read the book with the rest of the kids? And I was like, oh, because I can't read. And she's like, well, we've taught you to read because both of my parents went to college to be teachers, even though that's not what they wound up doing, but that was their training. So they used me, as their guinea pig, if you will. So she's like, you can read. Every Sunday you read the Washington Post to us. That's what you do as a little kid.
Yes.
And I said, well, my teacher told me I couldn't read. So my mother marches down to the school. She has them do an assessment because the teacher's like, I don't know. Of course I can read. And then my mother says she passes the classroom the next time, and I'm in the circle time, but everybody else is still coloring and having a ball. And my mom, even to this day, says, I should have fought for more of the kids. And I was like, Mom, it was the mid-70s. I'm not really sure how much you could have done in that situation.
Yeah.
But you supported me at a young age. That was a lesson that my mother and my father showed me, is that they really were a supporter of me. And that has you think you can accomplish a lot of things when you have that just kind of ingrained in your household. Yeah. Right? And so I think it started there. And then I think the other thing that I got to see really early on in life is, so my father, my family's from a small factory town, a car manufacturing town in Michigan called Saginaw, really small. And everybody works at the plant, every single person, both sides of my family. And what my father broke that mold because he wanted to be higher up, right? He'd gotten his degree and he realized he really couldn't eke a living that he'd wanted to. So he wound up luckily getting into Howard Law School, and that's what took us all to Washington, D.C. And he modeled that determination, how do you change your circumstances. And lots of other family members, aunts, uncles, neighbors, all followed him down there. And it changed everybody, it changed a community's outcomes, because now you have multiple people who have gone to law school and med school and all of those things and have, they left to forge a better life, but my father is where it started.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're a wife, you're also a parent. You have
Yes.
children. And you and I bonded many years ago through the fact that we both are parents of a child diagnosed with autism.
Yep.
How did that affect, well, how did it affect you basically?
Yeah.
And how did it affect you career-wise?
Yeah, we share that story,
Yeah.
and we both share lots of ups and downs
Yeah.
as it applies to that. In the beginning, especially like when our boys were young, both of our boys are adults now, so that's a
Yes.
whole different
My
type
son
of
is
parenting.
30 now.
Right, and
Yeah.
mine is 25,
Yeah,
so
right,
that's a different type of parenting.
Yeah, right.
But when they were younger and when we were, living by each other in SoCal, what I will say is I had to make different career choices at that point of my career because of all of the things you have to do, the therapies, the time you have to put into raising a child with, just completely different needs.
Yes.
And at the time, I wouldn't have thought I'd be sitting here talking to you. Not at the time. There
Yeah.
were some lows, some very low lows.
We know. I know. Yeah.
And it's taxing on a relationship as well.
Yeah.
And I know it's
I know that
really
too.
hard.
Yes.
But what I will say to you is supporters always help. So just having other people in your life that continue to press for you and root for you and be there for you. I definitely will say I had some of those people in my life. That actually, when I first met you, I had left my corporate career because at the time I was working at a big biotechnology company. Then I had left it, went over to Debbie Allen's, and a big part of me even kind of pivoting was Debbie is so funny. I would say, hey, I can't be at work at 8 o'clock because I have to go to the therapy.
Yes.
And she would say, child, I don't care what time you get to work as long as you do the work. She was like a work hybrid, work remote person before people even did that.
Wow.
She was completely
a blessing,
a supporter and a blessing at that time in my life for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
When you look down the line, you've done so many different things, and I tried to write down so many different things, and I can't write. You really are a Renaissance woman. As you look down the line, the things you've already done, what else do you still want to do?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think for me, it flips. There are times where I think I want to do, I wouldn't say I'm done with filmmaking, but my husband Bill may hope that I am, because it's a labor of love.
Yeah.
A lot of work that takes away from everything else.
I got your back, Bill. Yeah, I know.
But I don't know. I want to continue. So in the near term, I want to continue helping Wing scale. I think we have amazing opportunity in front of us. When people think about drone delivery, they still think it's, far off, that there's somebody, I like to say, sitting around with a joystick and like driving the drone. Our drones are autonomous. We've done over 350,000 deliveries. We're in 3 continents, Australia, we were in Finland, now we're in Ireland, and then we're also in the US. We just announced our partnership with Walmart in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We opened up our first store there in Frisco, Texas.
Wow.
Earlier, a couple months ago. We're opening up another site in a couple of weeks. And so we are really, focused on expanding that. And so I see a lot of potential. And so for the what's next, it's really scaling our drone delivery service, which we just recently, I want to explain, released a report. And in that report, we surveyed over 1,000 consumers and found that 74% want this fast mile delivery. And when we say fast mile, Dave, we're talking it's fast. Under 30 minutes. I mean, our fastest delivery time today has been just under 3 minutes. These drones are, they go in the air, they go 65 miles an hour. And my CEO likes to say the air is vast.
Wow.
Exactly. And so really expanding that is high on the horizon for me. Guess what? Take a gander, if you will, on what do you think is the number one thing that people order for drone delivery? And it's in the, I'll give you a hint, it's in the food
I was going to say
area.
Pizza.
It's actually coffee.
Really?
Which, if you think about it,
So it's got to be fast to keep it hot.
That's right. That's right.
Interesting. I really want to see this. Your mentors through the years. Tell me about your mentors and how did they mentor you?
So I will say, and I've talked about this gentleman. I cannot give him his flowers enough, and he's still alive. So I've given it to him many times, but I will give it to him again.
Yeah.
So a gentleman by the name of Larry Bailey. I would start with him. He was one of the first. He was actually the first African American tax partner, like in a big accounting firm. And I just can't imagine what he went through in like the 70s and 80s to even accomplish that. And so he's somebody, and this is why I tell young people all the time, Larry and I have never worked together at the same firm. So it's not like I met him at my firm or my company. I met him because I'm one of those people who, I'm a lifelong learner, but I'm also, when I see people doing something I want to do, I try to get to know them. We could say that. I'm driven. Maybe we'll say that. And so I started as a young lawyer, right? And a young CPA. I'm a CPA as well as a young CPA. I joined all the organizations that promote the profession, and I raised my hand and said I'd like to plan a panel, and I invited Larry to be on the panel. So I got to know him through just working through the organizations, and once I heard his story, I was like, you're not getting rid of me. So he has been one of those people who just throughout my career, I would call, I'd ask for advice, he would recommend people for me to meet, and then he wound up becoming my husband's mentor because my husband, Larry, also wound up being very active with the Wharton, he went to Wharton and then became really active with like their board, and then my husband wound up going to Wharton, and so again, Larry now becomes my husband's mentor as well, so it's a twofer with him. So it started with somebody like that, a role model who was really wanted to be invested, right, in my career. And then I've already mentioned what I will tell you about Miss Allen. When I joined her, besides just being at the right place for me in my life, when I was going through that with my son and just his diagnosis, she had me focus on something that I hadn't. I think you hear me now, you're like, you're so polished and you speak so well. But if I go back to where I was in my career at that time, I'd spent a lot of time doing a technical type of work. And so CPAs, like that type, you're very technical. And she would consistently say, child, say this in English. Say this in English.
Break it down.
Break it down. And so she was like, focus on the soft skills. She made her whole staff, she made us take an improv class. And at the time,
that's a great idea.
Like, think about it. At the time, I'm sitting around going, I did not go to law school to be in this improv class. It was like the best thing ever. It helped me with confidence, presence, all of those things that you don't learn in school. Nobody teaches you how to do that.
You also lived in Switzerland for a while. Tell me about that.
That was magical.
Really?
So, and in the sense that it just opened up my horizons to just, like, this is a global world, a global economy, and how you operate outside. I like to not always think about things from like a U.S. point of view. So my husband and I were both expats for this company called Amgen, which is a biotechnology company. And we lived in Switzerland, worked in Switzerland. So I'm in an office with people from all over the world, really. I remember, my son with autism, I was apprehensive about moving him over there. But it was an amazing experience. He went to an international school. It was the most diverse situation that any of my kids have ever been in terms of their schooling. You had people from all over the world in these type of schools. And interestingly, at the time, a lot of the professors at that school or the teachers at school came from like England, and I think they were really advanced in terms of their study of autism. So it was such a great placement for my son with autism at the time. And then I actually had a baby over there.
Did you really?
And he reminds me all the time that I may have messed up his ability to run for president because he wasn't born in the U.S.
Interesting. How did you meet Bill?
I met Bill in high school.
Did you really?
I did. I've known him for way over half of my life. We met in high school.
I met my wife in 3rd grade. In Philly. I did.
There you go. There you go.
And best thing I ever did. When you hear the words, lift as we climb. What does it mean to you?
It means that we have a responsibility that as we are, rising in our various organizations and our various community activities, et cetera, we have a responsibility to bring others along the way with us.
Yeah.
And I really do believe in that if you're not bringing somebody along the way, you didn't do your job.
Yeah. You know, I'm so glad, as we're going to wind down now, but I'm so glad to get a chance to not only to talk to you, but to showcase you. Because there's so many things I've always liked about you and have always been proud of you. And I have to just ask the thing about racism. There are people who see, well, yeah, she's okay, and there's one or two over there. Mm-hmm. But life for an African American at your level, moving through, is it easy? Is it difficult?
Of course, it's difficult, right? Of course it is. I mean, I guess I would say to you is that even though it's difficult, I can't give up.
Yeah.
I stand on the backs of people who didn't give up.
That's right.
So I try not to dwell on that at all, because I can't change that.
That's one of those questions I just always feel I have to ask someone who's reached certain heights. I'm so proud.
You're so nice.
No, and I mean that, and I care about you. I thank you, and I appreciate you for the things you've accomplished, and I congratulate you on credit for the great things you're going to do with Wing and with everything else that you do. And don't give up filmmaking either.
When something I'm passionate about strikes me, I could see myself doing something else. But right now, I'm focused on the film that I have out there. It's called On Board.
On Board.
And really getting that seen. We've done a lot of film festivals, and now the next stage is getting that seen like by the masses. And so I'm working on trying to get that placed somewhere so everybody, can see it. That's my next.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
My guest is Shannon Nash, the Chief Financial Officer of Wing, and just a talented person here in the Bay Area and beyond. Just great things. I just get happy, seriously, because I'm proud of you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me to share a little bit of the story. And I love doing these things because you never know who you're impacting.
That is quite true. Thank you, Shannon. And I thank you for joining us. And we'll see you next time. I'm Dave Clark. We'll see you on Talk of the Town.